I'm Ania Lichtarowicz, and this is Somewhere on Earth, your weekly look at technology and its impact on our everyday lives. I'm in Rio de Janeiro at Web Summit. It is Thursday, the 11th of June, 2026. Welcome to the Global Tech Podcast. Coming up today, more than 435 million people around the world now earn money through online gig work, according to the World Bank estimates. Yet many of the algorithms that decide what those workers earn remain hidden from view. At Web Summit Rio, we're asking a question that sits at the heart of the modern digital economy. When platforms control the data, the pricing, and increasingly the rules of work itself, who really benefits? We'll examine new analysis based on millions of ride offers, hear about a legal battle over driver data in Brazil, and explore why governments and regulators and workers around the world are struggling to keep pace with platform power. From Rio to Geneva, where countries are negotiating the future of work, this is a debate that could shape the next generation of the global economy. This is Somewhere on Earth, where tech meets humanity. The World Bank estimates there are now more than 435 million online gig workers globally. Yet for many of those workers, the systems determining what they earn are largely invisible. Today, we're exploring new research based on data gathered through GigU, a mobile app that helps drivers evaluate whether ride and delivery offers are actually profitable after costs and taxes. The findings raise important questions about transparency, platform power, and the future of work. Joining me are Len Sherman from Columbia Business School, Luiz Neves, CEO of GigU, and journalist and co-founder of Futuros Posibles, an analyst company, and friend of the show, Angelica Mari. Now, Len, you've analysed millions of trip offers received by Uber drivers across multiple cities with data collected by GigU. What's the single most important finding listeners should understand?
Well, I would start by saying that the theme of this show, where tech meets humanity, certainly applies to Uber. Everyone, I would assume, listening to the show has used Uber or 99 or other rideshare companies around the world, but Uber is the undisputed, king and leader. And it is a laboratory for us to understand what's going to increasingly happen across multiple parts of the economy, where market-leading companies who control the data, who control the information about how these marketplaces work and what are in the interests of riders and drivers in this case, are in a position to control setting the price that consumers pay and the pay that drivers receive. And they certainly have used that to their advantage, going from a company that initially lost more money than any startup company in history, remarkably, to now being a money-making machine. And it is largely due to their use of very sophisticated algorithms, massive databases that have remarkable knowledge and insight into the behaviors of both sides of their marketplace, riders and drivers, that they've exploited to full advantage. And other companies in other sectors are observing this, and I think we're going to increasingly see across a wide number of sectors companies turning to algorithmic pricing, raising the basic question about who gets to decide what's fair, correct, right for all the constituencies in our economy.
Now, one word or two words that keep coming up in your analysis is take rate. What is take rate?
Take rate is a commonly used term used across a number of different sectors, particularly involving companies I would describe as market maker platforms. They're the intermediaries that sit between buyers and suppliers of products and services. Apple does this through the App Store, online travel agencies where you can book, flights. All of these kinds of companies take a cut of what the customer pays for the product or service. And the percentage of what the customer pays that goes to the market maker or the intermediary, in this case Uber, is what's called their take rate, and the percent that goes to the supplier of the service, in this case the driver, is a key metric of who wins and who loses. And in my research, I was able to show that when Uber first launched its ride-sharing service back in 2011, they typically promised and actually delivered on their take rate. Uber's only meaning 15 to 20%, with drivers getting the remaining 80 to 85%. And now fast forward to today, you've gone from 15% take rate for Uber to 50 or more percent. As you can imagine, that's been very beneficial to Uber, and for drivers, not so much.
Yeah, absolutely, because the numbers that you're coming up with, when a driver started with Uber in the early days, it was around, the take rate moved was around 15%, right?
15 to 20. Yeah.
15 to 20. And now it's more than 50%. So when we look at the numbers, if a ride is $10, before they would get, say, $8.50. Now they're getting half.
And what makes this all the more remarkable is that as driver pay, now, so what Uber has done, starting in the United States in 2022 and then shortly thereafter around the rest of the world, is change their pricing policy to use algorithms that can set the rider price pretty much anywhere they want to, and set driver pay anywhere they want to as well. And that spread between raising rider prices, which they have, and squeezing driver pay, which they have. And to be more specific, driver pay has largely, for drivers in the US that we studied, stagnated for the last 7 years. I mean, when I saw these results, I was just gobsmacked, to use a British term,
Yeah.
that you're paying drivers the same price, pay per mile of driving a passenger a certain distance, now that you did 7 years ago. In that period, inflation in auto ownership and operating costs, which is what drivers have to absorb, has reached unprecedented inflation rates, and yet their pay levels have stayed, basically level. So it's been a very, very harmful transition for the drivers, and equally successful on the other side, offsettingly for Uber.
Now, Uber is the data you've worked on. That's the data you had from GigU. But there are some dynamics with companies like Apple and Ticketmaster that show similar trends.
Yeah, I mean, being an intermediary and market maker is a very common business model, thanks to the internet, that span across multiple sectors of the economy. You could be providing access to gig workers who provide services like Upwork and Fiverr. Those are two of the bigger ones. You could be an online travel agency, or you could be Apple, who runs an app store. And I'm sure all your listeners are familiar with buying an app from the App Store, and you probably know, or should, that when you pay for whatever the app charges for that app, Uber's taking 30% of that for the. I'm sorry, did I say Google? Google also takes 30%, as it turns out, but Apple takes 30%. And it's kind of struck me as pretty amazing. And this has been the subject of multiple lawsuits against Apple, that they are abusing their monopoly, essentially a monopoly power, to charge unreasonably high take rates. And the Supreme Court of the United States will be hearing the ultimate decision on how that is going to turn out. But can you imagine Apple quietly, without any fanfare, raising their take rate from 30%, which has already got them in trouble, to 50%? It's unimaginable. So the fact that Uber has steadily and slowly raised their take rate to this line of 50% and higher is unprecedented. And we'll just have to see how this plays out.
Now, you released your analysis yesterday. Has there been any response from Uber yet?
Not yet. In the past, I've documented in my research and articles published in the past that they surpassed 30%, and another one when they surpassed 40%. And in each case, they've been pretty upset. So I expect I'll be hearing from them soon.
And maybe we will be as well, but we welcome Uber to come onto the show. Now, the issue is simply how much is being taken, or is it that drivers don't know what's being taken?
Both.
Both.
Well, and the real issue, and I'm anxious to hear my friend and partner here, Luiz Neves, describe how he's helping drivers to level the playing field. The real issue is that there's an enormous asymmetric information advantage that Uber has. Trust me, they know more about you and your listeners and what your willingness to pay may be for any individual trip than you do yourself. And on the reverse side, they know the same thing about drivers and which drivers are, for any number of reasons, they're relatively new, they're unsophisticated, they're financially strapped, they just really need some income, whatever it is, and they can set those pay rates as low as they can determine they can get someone to sign on. And when you put those two together, being able to raise that rider price for certain riders in certain circumstances, ditto on the other side, that's what could allow that take rate to get to as high as 50% or more.
Len, for now, thank you, but stay with us. If the data suggests more value is being captured by the platform, the next question becomes what happens when workers try to understand or challenge those systems? Luiz, GigU found itself in a legal battle with Uber. Tell us what happened.
So first of all, it's important to understand what we do and how do we do it. So basically we help these workers to understand their financial structure. Basically, we break down all of their costs. If they're renting a car, financing a car, how much they're spending on maintenance, fuel, and so on, to give their ideal gain per hour and per mile. Then they configure our features called the cherry picker. And every time these platforms does not only work with Uber. In the States, it works with more than 7 platforms. But it assesses it and analyzes every offer that they receive and show how much is paying per kilometer or per mile and per hour, and compare it to what the inputs that they did before, right? To show if that offer is optimal for each one. And we show it in colors. Green is a good one, yellow not so good, and red, let it go, because it's not good for you. So we've been analyzing a lot of rides. Nowadays, we analyze over 20 million offers every single day. And we can see that almost half of those are considered yellow and red by our users. So actually 53%. So 53% of the rides that they receive are not ideal for the individual.
And just explain to me the system, because you're riding in Uber or other cab with another platform. And you're coming to the end and suddenly you hear beeping on the driver's phone. Something flashes up.
It happens to everyone.
They're touching screens. Tell me and tell our listeners what's happening at that point.
And even more than that, this happens to everyone. Like you're inside one of these cars and the guy's driving and it starts the music and he's like, right?
Louis looks away into the corner.
Right?
Stage right there, everybody.
But he's like looking at the screen and not to the road, not paying attention to where he's supposed to be. Because he's doing math. And the math that they need to do is they need to sum the distance where he is to the pickup point, to the distance from the pickup point to the drop-off, and then divide by the amount of money that has been offered to reach the how much he's paying per mile or kilometer. Then they need to do the same thing with the time estimate. It's impossible to do that while driving in 7 seconds. Because there are times of the day where the distance is more important, the value per kilometer, value per mile is more important, and there are other times of the day that the value per hour is more important. And they need to know both. But the platforms, they don't show that, of course. If they did, they would not be accepting.
Yeah, if 53% aren't favourable to them, then they would be rejected, wouldn't they?
Exactly.
So, how many drivers, because you're in Brazil, you're in the US, aren't you? Tell me how many drivers you have actually using your application.
In total, we have over 200,000 active users.
Okay, so there's 200,000 drivers who should have some transparency and know that, hey, I'll take this one, or I better not touch this one because I'll actually be losing money
Yes.
over this one. And why is it that the workers can't have access to this information? Is it just so Uber can set prices how they want to?
If they show the information that we are showing, then half of those trips would not be accepted. Usually, when they keep track on the acceptance rate, right? The platforms keep track of that, and it tends to be in between 70 to 80% acceptance rate in Brazil. In the US, it's higher, right? Then I'll tell you a story about a US driver that I met a couple months ago in San Francisco. But usually, when they start using us, the acceptance rates drop. And the thing is that they're being more selective, as they should, because Uber and all of these other companies, they don't know what your cost breakdown is. They don't know if you're renting a car, how behind you are on your maintenance or monthly installments of your financing. They don't know that. And it's not their business. It's okay. But they should know. The drivers need to know first. Okay, it's the first rule of any business. How much it costs me to operate this business.
Absolutely.
But in countries like Brazil specifically, where we have very little financial education, I mean, it's like fishing with dynamite for these companies.
Now, you've described this as a dignity issue as much as an economic issue.
Yes. Thing is, let's keep on Brazil for a moment. They work 6 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day. So they're very hard workers, right? But they lack the information they need to be successful. All of these companies, their process is the same, where you apply, you submit your documentation, and then one day you receive an email, congrats partner, welcome, and off you go.
And that's it. You don't get any instructions anyway.
No.
This is our contract. This is how you're going to get
Oh no,
paid.
the contract is settled, but you just have to accept it.
Right, okay, there's no negotiation.
No, of course not.
And I should interject just for a moment.
Please.
Go back to that gig work, and Uber is a perfect example of it, is a very isolating profession.
Yes.
You are literally on your own, driving 12 to 14 hours, and you have very little opportunity in your daily work process to interact with other drivers. Hey, this works well for me, you might want to try it. And so this asymmetric information advantage, to use an academic term that I used earlier, is exaggerated in ride sharing. That Uber knows everything about all their drivers and riders, and drivers are left to their own. It's just such an unfair fight.
And when we started this company, actually, we had a different solution, right? We used to rent underused parking lots, and in these locations, we would build like a one-stop shop for gig workers.
This was Stop Club. And you've spoken to us about this before. But
exactly.
Yes, do explain the games we've had in
Sorry, just real quick. But the things that we noticed that was one of the biggest advantages of it was not only the convenience. It was exactly what Len was saying. It was the exchange of experience that happened there. Say, the difference between a newcomer and an experienced driver can be tenfold in terms of efficiency. It makes a lot of difference. So we saw that. And so how can we replicate this? And it is very tough to replicate that on scale, right? So our app nowadays help them by calculating that in 0.6 seconds.
Wow. And they just have it on their screen and they go, it's red, decline.
Exactly.
For now, Luiz, thank you. And now, Angelica, welcome back to Somewhere on Earth. Lovely to have you with us.
Lovely to be back.
Now, tell me, why is meaningful accountability so hard when it comes to Uber and other platforms?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to that question. The first is that we're trying to challenge global pricing engines with local rulebooks, because we know rules change from country to country, state from state. If we think of the US, for example, what applies in one state may not make sense in another. In Brazil, platforms have been challenged in a all sorts of issues. But whatever rule is introduced here, be it take rate from platforms, child safety, what have you, is not going to make a change in the company's core algorithm. So that's one side. The other side is that it is really challenging to hold the company to a number that is invisible. So if you have a fixed take rate, so let's say 15%, and is that, or a subscription price, and end of the story is one thing. But now, when you're talking about a dynamic pricing model that it is incomprehensible to anyone outside the company, then it becomes really hard. You can't possibly regulate what you're not even allowed to observe.
Indeed, but you have described Brazil as a canary in the coal mine. So, first of all, explain that analogy to people, because not everybody will understand it. But why should this matter to people beyond Brazil?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing to note is that companies, global tech companies, they won't necessarily test their most aggressive monetization strategies in highly regulated markets like Silicon Valley or in London, what have you. They would tend to do it in places where either labor regulations are quite thin or where governments can't catch up to technological developments. So what happens then is that companies will test models here, and these models will be affecting mostly people who have less room to push back, less of a condition to say no. So our data at Futuros Possíveis suggests that people who rely the most on gig economy work, and I mean not just Uber, but other types of gig work, they tend to be the people who are most vulnerable. So Black workers, people who can't find formal employment, they're young. So when you think about extraction, it doesn't operate the same way across society. It will impact more these people who have less room to challenge or to decline from using these platforms.
And you've got data through your company. Mm-hmm. What are workers actually looking for in this?
Mm-hmm. It seems to be different to what platforms say, because I've worked in the technology. I've worked in the technology industry as a journalist for over 2 decades, and the discourse always seems to be either you have flexibility, you can use this wonderful platform that we're offering you so you can earn a living or supplement your income through this platform, but either you have flexibility or you have to relinquish your fundamental rights. You can't have both. So this is a corporate talking point, but what people on the ground are saying is that they actually want some regulation, but they also want their autonomy. So I completely understand that we've done a lot of things wrong, like the industry has done a number of things wrong, and it's really hard to put the genie back in the bottle. But I think the question that should be asked is why is it that we can't have transparency and flexibility at the same time?
Indeed, because this isn't just about one company, it's about a global shift in the way work is organized. Many platforms use platform work as use platform work as supplemental income. Does that make structural problems easier to ignore, do you think?
Yeah, it's one way to look at it. Our data shows that 1 in 8 people actually use it as a sole means of income. Most people use gig work in Brazil to supplement income from elsewhere. So in that context, it's easier to miss this steady increase in take rate because attention is so divided.
Absolutely.
So it's easier to miss that sort of increase.
Meanwhile, as we're speaking, representatives from 187 countries are gathered in Geneva, and they are discussing the future of platform work at the International Labour Conference. Does that suggest momentum is finally building, do you think?
Yeah, but realities are very different from one country to another, like I was mentioning. And that has to be taken into account. I think one of the complexities that gig work introduces is that realities and rules, and they're all different from one place to another. So that has to be taken into account. And also the fact that, like we were saying, the canary in the coal mine kind of situation. The introduction of subscription models, for example, illustrates precisely that these kinds of mechanisms, they will be firstly piloted in places where people are more vulnerable. So what can be done to sort of regulate that and stop that when it actually causes more harm than good?
Angelica, I'm so glad you brought up that subscription model because, Luis, I was going to ask you about that. It is now operating in parts of Brazil. Tell me how it works.
So in a couple of smaller cities in Brazil, Uber is testing a new model that basically drivers pay in advance. This is actually upfront. So they need to pay this subscription that they call a pass. And you can either pay a daily pass or a by income pass. And once you do, you're eligible to receive rides. Then you pay and then you wait. But they're forcing this in the cities. So they don't operate under the old model anymore, and you have to pick one. 99, which is another company that we have here in Brazil, owned by Didi, they started the same, like a week after. I don't know which companies was looking to another one, but anyways, they started doing the same, but it's optional. So you can either stick with the floating take rate, or you can join and hop into one of those subscription models.
And what are the drivers saying? Have you had any feedback?
Yes. So we do a lot of research. Usually when we do a structure research with drivers, we get something like 20,000 to 30,000 answers. This has been really recent, so we hadn't much time to do them deep research. But from what we gather from our social media and the posts that we did and the comments that on WhatsApp groups and so on, is that they're very afraid of it.
Okay.
Because it's one other element that they just can't control. Like, should I get the daily pass or should I hop into the other kind of pass? By the way, how does this operate? Because what they say is, oh, you pay the pass and then you get 100% of the ride fee. Okay, so we'll imagine that if I get an airport trip, which here in Rio is an expensive one, right? And the passenger used to pay something like 150, 130 reais, let's say, depending on the region. From here, where we are, to the airport, you suddenly go like that. Will I get that, or will be cheaper for the passenger? You don't know, because
okay. So it's unclear.
It's like a box that is like completely sealed, and the information hasn't been disclosed. So.
And often we hear that question from drivers: how much is the you're paying through the app? And then what that actually results often is rides being negotiated outside the app.
Okay.
Which is crazy.
I mean, drivers, they do get very upset when they discover that they're being paid like half, as Len research shows. They do get upset. But when they're paying, no matter how is the take rate, if they're paying what they want per kilometer or per mile and per hour, they're pretty much okay with that. The problem is that when they're being so squeezed and they're not working and they start to get really anxious about this. Look, usually they receive 300 offers a day to make something like 20 to 25 rides. But when it's like in the middle of the day of their daily shift, like shift in quotes, but and they've done like half of the rides that they are programmed or set to do, they start to do bad decisions. They start to accept rides that they shouldn't.
Yeah, because if someone's tired, someone's stressed, you don't take good decisions, whatever you're doing.
Exactly. And again, 7 seconds. The music's over there. We heard many drivers telling us that they dream with that song. That song, almost like a ringtone, you know?
Yeah.
That they dream about it.
Ding, 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 ding.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
We've just lost 100 listeners there straight away. But it's an incredibly stressful sound, and it's a trigger.
Yeah.
Can I just add something? That's as Ania and I were walking over to this recording booth, I was sharing some thoughts with you that are very relevant to this conversation, which is that Uber is in a unique position of controlling the levers of both pricing and pay rates. So so forgetting about subscription models for a moment, as this is played out in Brazil, in the US and elsewhere, it's allowed them to raise rider prices very quickly and hold down or squeeze driver pay, the net result being increasing take rates and increasing profits for Uber at drivers' expense. Now, if we shift to subscription model, subscription models can be more transparent and a better deal for drivers in this case, except Uber in their version of a subscription model continues to say we will control what the rider will pay and what you will get. So and that's unique. And I take another very popular market maker platform like Airbnb. If you're a host and you own an apartment and you want to list your apartment on Airbnb, you as the host get to set the price. And what the percentage take Airbnb will take when and if you rent it is very clear. You know exactly what that take rate is. So you set the price, you know what the take rate is. Neither of those conditions are true in Uber's subscription model. It basically says, you give us a day pass number, whatever the price is, to be able to access our platform today. And we'll tell you what ride you may be willing to accept, but we'll set the price for that ride. We won't tell you what the price for that is. We'll only tell you what you'll get. And so it keeps them in the same level of control over both sides of the marketplace as the model that's been so successful today. So it's a bad deal going to another bad deal.
But something interesting that came up in the press conference that both Len and Luiz were taking part yesterday at this event was the fact there are challengers coming up, like Empower. But I wonder if this almost monopoly, right, that Uber holds and all their marketing power and all of that, are challengers like Empower kind of utopic in a way? Because I wonder whether that activist consumer is really out there and whether convenience will win over doing what's right. What's your take on that, Luiz?
This the story about all entrepreneurs. We don't know if it's impossible, so we challenge it. And sometimes we discover that it is impossible, but very often we take over and succeed. Every entrepreneur thinks that in its core is going to change the world. If it's a good entrepreneur, thinks that he's going to change the world for the better. But I don't know if they will succeed, but hopefully they'll be good contestants.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've just had a little sign up saying that our time is coming to an end. So thank you all very much. The questions we've explored today aren't simply, though, about ride-hailing. They're about data ownership, transparency, worker power, and who benefits from the next generation of digital platforms. These issues affect a workforce larger than the population of many continents, and with international negotiations underway on the future of platform work, the decisions being made today could shape how hundreds of millions of people earn a living tomorrow. Len, I know that more analysis from GigU data is expected later this year, so we look forward to revisiting this conversation, and please come back to us.
Stay tuned.
My thanks to Len Sherman, Angelica Mari, Luiz Neves, and thank you to everyone at Web Summit Rio and the production team behind the scenes, especially Connor Galvin, podcast manager at Web Summit. The sound engineer today was Leandro Fonte. I'm Ania Lichtarowicz, and this is Somewhere on Earth, the Global Tech Podcast.